Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. In this extraordinary Black Friday and Cyber Monday bonus episode, Sean McCormick, head of growth strategy Spendscape Moneris, joins us with breaking news and real spending numbers telling us the tale of the tape for 2022 Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Sean leverages powerful analytical tools to provide a snapshot of year-over-year and week-over-week consumer spending numbers. Let's listen in now. Sean, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Well, thanks for joining us on the podcast. It's really a great, I couldn't think of better timing. So this is a unique opportunity for both of us to get some real on-the-street intel right after the big Black Friday, Cyber Monday week. So thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure, my friend. Anything we can do to help support, small, medium, and large businesses in Canada, that's what we like to do.
Right on. All right. Well, we jumped right in a little bit. Tell me, who are you and what you do for a living at Moneris?
Yeah, sure. So I look after the growth strategy for our data division at Moneris. What does that mean? Our data, because we're the leading processor in Canada, we process more transactions than anyone else in the country across all card brands from all issuing banks, both credit and debit. It really is an important and useful source of data for researchers to understand what is going on as it relates to consumer spend here in Canada. So, when it comes to things like policy decisions and researching maybe investment decisions that relate to consumer spend, that's what our data is really good for, because it's incredibly reliable and basically, because we're owned by RBC and BMO, right, Michael? I don't know if you knew that. And by virtue of
the audience might not, so thank you for that. I mean, I've got an international audience as well, so that's a great ad. Basically, you track everything in our context, in the retail context, except cash. You basically track everything except that, and I guess reward redemption points, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's, because of that market penetration, that gives us, it's a really good statistically relevant sample. So when we look at events like Black Friday and Cyber Monday, whether that's a local, provincial, or national view, it's a very reliable sample to work with.
Right on. Now talk a bit more about this division you work for. Is it new? I mean, there's very few people from Canada who'll be listening to this, if anyone, who doesn't know Moneris and the core of what you do. But is the data division new? And tell me about that.
Yeah, relatively. It was we were working, in some research projects with some clients, some cities, in different cities across the country, for the last 7 or 8 years. But that was sort of off the corner of a couple of our desks. And then when the pandemic hit 3 years ago, and consumer behavior became very unpredictable and erratic, the market responded with requests to us to try to understand what consumer behavior looked like so that it could anticipate the next move. So it really catapulted our data division into a real business. That's
the difference, right? That's a material difference from like pre-pandemic, whatever that it is now. Because I do remember, I think it was your division that was helping, for example, the City of Toronto figure out if the streetcar test on King Street worked, right? What was going on with the restaurants, and keep it confidential, but at the same time come to a conclusion about something that whether it is, I mean, that's the net of what you do. Now, we should also talk about the innovative partnership that you formed with Retail Council of Canada and their Retail Pulse dashboard. Now, talk a little bit about that and what kind of data you contribute on an ongoing basis into the dashboard.
Right. Well, the goal of the Retail Pulse dashboard is to make it quicker and easier for RCC member retailers to find the key data points that help inform decision making. And really, that's what Moneris data is ultimately used for in a number of different use cases. We're trying to use our data, have clients use our data to inform decision making. So when the RCC came to us and said, "Look, what kind of spending categories can you report on?" My response was all of them. We're talking about restaurants, we're talking about apparel, grocery, hardware, sporting goods. I mean, you name it.
Anybody who takes money, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we have 350,000 merchant locations across the country, and we report in aggregate.
Wow.
That's an important point I want to make, Michael, is that all of our reporting is in aggregate, which is to say we group all of our merchants together in one basket. It's anonymized, and we are aggregating the results to produce a single output. We will never report on a single merchant, and we will never report on a single consumer. We just won't do it. We can't do it. So in aggregate, it can support amazing dashboards. We do a ton of work with companies that are looking to build dashboards to report either on their own data. It could be a merchant that wants us to help them use their own data for a dashboard, or it could be like the RCC, and they want the aggregated results from across the country in different retail spend categories.
Now, if I was to go to the RCC Pulse dashboard today, what would I see? Would I see data from last month, the prior month, by category? Like, give us just a flavor of what we would expect, or what folks
on the members. So on the non-member site, what you would see is just a retail number, which is all of the merchant categories, grouped up one hierarchy. So it's just a retail number. So what you're going to see is year over year change in volume, change in dollar volume, average transaction size, those kinds of measures. And then if you're a member, on the member side, what we do is we break that out into different provincial results. So if you're a retailer in Ontario, the data that you would see for year over year change in retail spend and average transaction size might be very different from what a retailer in Newfoundland might see.
And so I go in there and I get a sense of provincial performance. And is that, if I went in there today, we're talking on Friday, December 2nd, what do I see? Do I see November's data? Do I see October's data? What do I see?
Yeah. They update their data monthly on that website. So we can update that data as often as biweekly. The data is always reported weekly. So you're always going to get all of our clients get weekly results. The question is, how often do they ask us to run the report and deliver it to them? We can do that as often as every 2 weeks. Most of our clients do, monthly, but and some do snapshots. Like some of the municipalities, like the cities that we work with across the country, where the budgets aren't particularly large, they might say, just give us one report at the end of the year for all of 2022, and we'll work with that.
Well, speaking of Pulse and dashboard, quick response dashboard, we asked and we talked about a couple of months ago what would be a dream for me and a dream for us is to, in addition to what we put in the retail conditions report, talking to retailers, have some data about Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because typically it's a big black hole. Nobody really knows what's going on. So that's the purpose of today, really. Let's dig in to what you've discovered about sales performance over, let's call it the period of Black Friday through to Cyber Monday. What did you learn? What did you see? What did you observe?
So I guess the observation would be that the year over year growth in Black Friday 2022 versus 2021 was actually quite minimal, and even less so when you consider that the inflation rate in Canada is 6.7% or 6.8%. So if you think that generally goods and services are costing 7% more this year than they were last year at this time, and when you see an overall Black Friday dollar volume growth of 2.5% by dollar volume, that tells me that Black Friday probably took a step backwards this year in terms of engagement with Canadians. Just by virtue of that single data point, which is inflation. So the number was 2.4% growth year over year, dollar volume growth across the country. Now, the event itself versus the previous calendar Friday, which was November 18th. So Black Friday, November 25th, 2022, the previous Friday, November 18th, 2022, we saw about a 12% bump in dollar volume between those two Fridays. The question then becomes, did Canadians respond to the Black Friday offers? Yes, because the dollar volume was up by 12%. However, when you consider inflation as, as an input to that number, I think it paints a bit of a different picture. And what that tells me is that Canadians might be changing their spending habits maybe a little bit quicker than people think. Like data is the change you don't see coming, right, Michael? I always say that.
Yeah, interesting.
And this data point, I mean, we're really proud that our Black Friday Cyber Monday data is always the first data to come out.
Yeah.
And if this is a leading indicator of what we can expect in the holiday season, I think retailers, if they hope to move product, they might have to sharpen their pencils a little bit to get the attention of consumers, would be what I would say about that. So our data is specific to the two dates, the Friday and the Monday in particular. We didn't study the weekend dates. But the Cyber Monday, again, our data is telling us that the impact of Cyber Monday on consumer spend was actually even less than Black Friday. So our data tells us that year over year versus Cyber Monday 22 versus Cyber Monday 21, that Cyber Monday 22 was only 1.35% of an increase over the previous year. In terms of the week over week number, so Cyber Monday versus the previous Monday, nationally, that's looking like about a 7.5%. Impact. So the event impact day of was about 7.5% in terms of dollar volume.
It's super interesting because, of course, mileage varies when it comes to in that inflation number, right? I mean, it's higher in food and grocery and gas. It's pretty modest in some other categories like apparel. And so, there's more information to shake out, but there's no question you could say it didn't knock the cover off the ball. But anyways, now I want to get to this point. This is in the cycle of the way Black Friday falls in the calendar. This is the earliest of like 3 or 4 years, right? Because it's based on the Thanksgiving U.S. holiday, and so it's very early this year. So there's actually a lot of weekends left to go in the holiday season. Now, typically, I would say the biggest retail day of the year. Christmas is on the 25th this year. The 24th is a Saturday, but the day before isn't typically a big day because people are starting to wind down and get together with family. What do you think the biggest day is going to be the biggest shopping day of the year is going to be this year? What do you think?
Typically your Black Friday is right up there. Boxing Day is right up there. And any week leading up into, or any day of the week leading up to the 25th. But Black Friday and Boxing Day are typically the big ones. Maybe people are waiting this year. I don't know. I would also, Michael, I'd preface what I said about, maybe the uninspiring Black Friday numbers across the board. Apparel did really, really well.
Oh, okay.
So apparel, our data, week over week, so looking at Black Friday apparel versus the previous Friday apparel, dollar volume was up 70%. 70.
Yeah. Everybody's working and going out now. So, I mean, the apparel guys really took it in the teeth, but now they're getting, they're benefiting on the other side of that, right? Just like travel guys, right?
Yeah, right.
Travel folks are benefiting.
You brought up travel. So, so airlines were up 101% year over year on Black
You think anybody's
Friday.
going to be left in Canada when it's February? I think everybody's going to be down south somewhere. I don't think there's going to be anybody here. Okay, here's my bet. You and I should have a bet, and then we'll get back on the microphone. I bet Saturday, December 17th, will be the biggest day in retail of the year. It'll be the last Saturday, really full Saturday before the Christmas, and you also have grocery wrapped in. What do you think?
Right, just because of the way Christmas falls this year.
Yeah, because the Saturday, the 24th, it won't be as big a day because people, as I said, they start by 3 o'clock. They're off with their families.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to bet against that. That's perfectly logical. I mean, sometimes we get where Christmas is falling on a Saturday. Let's say. I think maybe that was last year.
And then you get a big Thursday kind of thing, right? But
right.
I think it's I don't know. I'm going to get you back, and maybe I'll have you pull some data and see if you can. As you said, you're not betting against me, but let's see if you can validate.
Yeah.
Listen, this is a bonus snapshot You've pulled some data for us in a right hurry. I guess that both indicates the capabilities of your data and your group. So listen, thanks so much for pulling that data. Give everybody a pulse and make sure that people can touch base with the data as it comes into the RCC dashboard. But also, how do they get in touch with you if they want to get a little bit more information? Where do they go to find out more? Google
Moneris data.
Are you a LinkedIn guy? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Also on LinkedIn. Yes, I am. Yeah, Sean McCormick is the name,
and data is the game. All right, Sean. Yeah. Thanks for joining me. Great to catch up. Thanks again for the insights, and thanks for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast.
Thanks, brother. It was fun.
Thanks for tuning into this special episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and click and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically twice a week. And check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Conversations with Commerce Next Podcast, and the Food Professor Podcast with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my all-new YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of M.E. LeBlanc Company and Maven Media. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Have a safe week, everyone.